At a briefing today, President Joe Biden blamed Donald Trump for the disinformation that is swirling and coming from the right in the wake of Hurricane Helene and as millions are in the path of this hurricane, Hurricane Milton. Watch.
For the last few weeks, there's been a reckless, irresponsible, and relentless promotion of disinformation and outright lies that are disturbing people. It's undermining confidence in the incredible rescue and recovery work that has already been taken and will continue to be taken. And it's harmful to those who need help the most. There is simply no place for this to happen. Former President Trump has led the onslaught of lies. Now the claims are getting even more bizarre. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, a congresswoman of Georgia, is now saying the federal government is literally controlling the weather. We're controlling the weather. It's beyond ridiculous. It's got to stop. In moments like this, there are no red or blue states. There's one United States of America, where neighbors are helping neighbors. Volunteers and first responders are risking everything, including their own lives, to help their fellow Americans.
Joining us now is United States Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. Mr. Secretary, it's great to see you.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
I want to get to your personal fight against disinformation with one of its biggest purveyors in a second, but I first wonder if you can just share with our viewers what the Department of Transportation is doing to prepare for and protect folks in the path of this hurricane in Florida, Hurricane Milton.
Well, we've got folks positioned now, and that's everywhere from FAA to Federal Highway Administration, ready as soon as it's possible to get into the affected area afterwards to help. We've been engaging up until now to support things like evacuation, making sure that the shoulder lanes are in use on I-4 and I-75, to take one example, doing anticipatory approvals for drone flights that wouldn't normally yet be licensed, but are going to help Florida utilities, for example, survey the damage that may be happening. So whether we're talking about sea, air, or land, we're doing everything we can to help make sure that Florida is well positioned to recover. I'll note, of course, this is happening at the same time as we continue to work on the response to Hurricane Helene. Between those two events, we've got hundreds of DOT personnel on the ground. I participated in the briefing yesterday, briefing President Biden on our work alongside several cabinet agencies, and I was reflecting. It's the only time I can think of when we had to provide updates on what we were doing to deal with the last disaster and what we were doing for an upcoming disaster in the same meeting. That just tells you how much the U.S. is being hit all at once by this. But extraordinary people are showing extraordinary teamwork and resilience, from the responders and the response personnel to ordinary people impacted by these storms. And that's what we're really counting on, that teamwork, that focus, and a lot of federal resources to make sure that everybody gets through this.
Mr. Secretary, the head of FEMA responded to what you're giving voice to, just the sheer number and the gravity of the disasters hitting our country right now. Let me show that to you.
This is a high number. This is the most open disasters that I have seen with FEMA. This increase in the number of severe weather events we're seeing, as well as the complexity of many of these events because of the amount of damage that they're doing, is increasing the number of open disasters because the recovery is more complex and it takes longer to help reimburse these communities as they rebuild from the weather events that they have experienced.
Just talk about how vital that makes the quality of the information and people's ability to trust the information they're getting from the government and people there to help them.
Well, information is a basic need when you're dealing with a disaster. Just like you need clean water, you need power, you need transportation, you need information. And we're working to make sure people know the good, trusted sources of information to turn to. For example, when it comes to transportation, that includes the information available through a 511 system where the state pulls together the best information about what routes are available and open and safe, and what routes might be closed down or impassable. It is so important right now to turn to trusted sources of information, whether it's 511, whether it's FEMA, whether it's your local mayor and first responders, and not be listening to some guy on the internet, because it can make a life or death difference in the context of a disaster and in the aftermath of a disaster. People need to know what is available to them. So, for example, when somebody pushes a lie that the $750 that FEMA makes available for immediate needs like food, water, and diapers is all you're going to get, if somebody believes that, they might not get the resources that they actually deserve. So we're going to continue working hard to make sure that good information is reaching people. And by the way, I have to say, in my conversations that I've been having with senators, governors, mayors, you would never know which of them belong to the same political party as I do and which belong to the opposite political party. It's not about politics. It shouldn't be about politics. And we have to keep it that way.
Well, but to your point about some guy on the internet, there's a guy named Elon Musk who spread disinformation about Hurricane Helene that entered into the political ecosystem almost immediately, and certainly had as potential victims the people who were impacted by the storm. Talk about your efforts to combat the lies he was spreading about the airspace.
Well, I saw something go up on his feed that wasn't right. I responded directly, and pretty soon after that, we were talking. And I will say what we determined was, while it was certainly not the case that FAA was causing the problem that they were being accused of causing, it was the case that people delivering Starlink satellite equipment were running into issues, and FAA was able to help resolve that. So to me, it's a good example of the difference between human beings talking to each other in order to solve a problem versus everybody just kind of being behind their Twitter accounts saying things that aren't verified.
I feel like if we got rid of the things that we hide behind, we'd solve a whole lot of problems. Let me show you what the vice president had to say about this phenomenon in a phone interview with CNN.
I have spoken with local officials who have been struck, for example, by Hurricane Helene, and they are doing an extraordinary job in trying to combat the misinformation. And I'm talking about sheriffs, I'm talking about mayors, I'm talking about local officials. I don't even know their party affiliation, by the way, but leaders on the ground who know that it is not in the best interest of the people living in those areas to not know their rights, not to know what they're entitled to, and to be afraid of seeking help. It is dangerous. It is unconscionable, frankly, that anyone who would consider themselves a leader would mislead desperate people to the point that those desperate people would not receive the aid to which they are entitled. And that's why I call it dangerous. And we all know it's dangerous. And the gamesmanship has to stop. At some point, the politics have to end, especially in a moment of crisis and the crises that we've been seeing.
Do you feel confident that the administration can play whack-a-mole and successfully combat all the disinformation, or is the quantity and the ease with which it's disseminated another thing that's coming up in meetings behind closed doors as one of the things that needs a federal government response?
Well, it is an enormous challenge. And, I was speaking to the FEMA administrator yesterday. She mentioned how there have always been issues in disasters. Maui, certainly this happened where there's misinformation or there's scams, but we've never seen anything like we have at this level. And it makes it all the more important, certainly for us to get good information out, for trusted sources to make themselves heard. The editorial role of journalistic organizations that have standards and that do fact checks is incredibly important at a time like this. But I'll also say there's a level of just responsibility, that if you are in a position of responsibility, if you're an elected official, if you're a major business leader, anybody with a platform needs to know that a lot depends on their telling the truth. And, some of the most outlandish things we heard, we heard about somebody saying that a member of Congress saying that this was the result of somebody controlling the weather. I think a lot of us have views about that member of Congress, but there are people out there who, because that's a member of Congress, will believe that sort of thing. And it's never been more important, especially when you have life and death decisions depending on people understanding the information that they're getting from real credible sources like mayors and police and fire departments and FEMA to have good information flow and to have trusted people. This is not the time to be listening to anybody who isn't credible.
And I know you're here in your official capacity, but how would you judge the character of someone who is indifferent to the ability of their own supporters or any Americans at this hour to make life and death decisions about evacuations or reimbursements or the help they need from the federal government?
All I can say is that the people whose lives depend on good information are Americans. They may be Democrats, Republicans, independents, doesn't matter. They're our fellow Americans. They deserve support. They deserve resources, which is exactly what our administration is mobilizing. We got more than 8,000 federal personnel on the ground, hundreds just from my department alone out there helping. That's what they're getting because that's what they deserve, help and support. And they deserve good information. They deserve the truth. And I don't care if you're in office or you're just a very visible person out there. Anybody who has a platform has a responsibility as well to use that platform to make sure people get good information and to tell the truth.